It would be interesting to hear your and the company's thoughts on the medium and long-term opportunities set, since I am aware that a large number of investors in the audience are really interested in the data center sector. The next industrial revolution, as you call it, is clearly being made possible by your industry. What difficulties does the industry face? As we sit here today, briefly share your thoughts on the data center market. Since air is a terrible conductor of power, these enormous data centers are incredibly inefficient. Our goal is to densify that enormous data center, which we call a 50, 100, or 200 megawatt data center, into a very, very compact data center. Nvidia server racks, which may cost up to a few million dollars each, appear pricey when you look at one of our server racks, but they replace thousands of nodes. The astounding thing is that replacing all of those and consolidating into a single rack is less expensive than simply replacing the connections used to link outdated general-purpose computer systems. Another advantage of densifying is that it allows for liquid cooling, which is advantageous for very small data centers, but difficult for very large ones. Therefore, updating data centers, accelerating, densifying, and increasing their energy efficiency is the first thing we're doing. It's far more efficient, you save money and power. We'll only speed up that if we only concentrate on that for the next 10 years. There's a second dynamic now, of course. Because of the massive cost reductions brought about by Nvidia's accelerated computing, we have scaled computers by 1,000,000 times in the previous 10 years, as opposed to Moore's law, which is 100x. So if your plane could move 1,000,000 times quicker, what would you do differently? What would you do differently? Hey, listen, why don't we just use computers to write software, was the question that suddenly sprang to me. Rather than attempting to identify the features or algorithms, we will simply provide the computer with all of the data, including the predictive data, and allow it to determine the algorithm, machine learning, generative AI. Because we did it so extensively and in so many different data domains, computers are now able to comprehend not only how to process data, but also what that data means. Additionally, it is capable of translating data due to its simultaneous understanding of several modalities. English can therefore be translated into pictures, pictures into English, English into proteins, and proteins into chemicals. And it can now perform all of this translation as it comprehended all of the material at once. Vast amounts of text into little amounts of text, small amounts of text into vast amounts of text, and so on and so forth, is what we refer to as generative AI. This computing revolution is currently underway. The first $1 trillion worth of data centers will be hastened, which is incredible. Additionally, generative AI is a new kind of software that is more than simply a tool. It is a skill. Thus, the intriguing aspect is this. For this reason, a new industry has emerged. This is because, if you look at the entire IT sector up to this point, we have been producing tools and devices that people use. We are going to develop skills that enhance people for the first time. Because of this, people believe AI will spread into the field of talents, rather than just the trillions of dollars spent on data centers and it. What exactly is a skill, then? It takes expertise to be a digital chauffeur. An autonomous digital assembly line worker robot is a competence. A digital customer service chatbot is a skill. A digital employee for planning is a talent. Nvidia has digital employee services and uses ServiceNow extensively in its supply chain. Thus, in essence, we now have all these computerized humans. We are currently experiencing that tsunami of AI. Taking a step back and making a slight adjustment in light of what you just mentioned, there is undoubtedly a continuous discussion in the financial markets around whether there will be a sufficient return on investment as we proceed to develop this AI infrastructure. At this stage of the cycle, how would you rate the return on investment for customers? And how do the returns on investment, ROIs, look now as we continue to scale, compared to when PCs and cloud computing were at similar stages in their adoption cycles? All right, let's have a look. If you recall, virtualization was the big thing prior to cloud computing. Virtualization simply meant, let's take all of the hardware we have in the data center, let's virtualize it into essentially a virtual data center, and then we can move workload across the data center, instead of associating it directly to a particular computer. Consequently, that data centers' usage and inclination improved. Overnight, we saw pretty much a 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1, if you will, decrease in data center costs. The second thing we said was that we immediately placed those virtual computers in the cloud after virtualizing that. As a result, numerous apps from numerous companies can share a resource, rather than just one company. One more cut in expenses. Utilization increased once more. By the way, the underlying dynamic that was taking place underneath all of this activity over the past 10 to 15 years was the end of Moore's Law. The end of transistor scaling was concealed by another 2x in cost reduction that we discovered. The transistor CPU scaling was concealed. The utilization cost savings from each of these things were then abruptly obtained. We're now out, and that's the reason why we see data center and computing inflation happening right now. Thus, rapid computing is the first development. You frequently take your data processing work. If you use Spark, you may be familiar with this tool. It's perhaps the most used data processing engine in the world today. A 20 to 1 speedup is not uncommon when using Spark and accelerating it with Nvidia in the cloud. You will save 10 times as much. Of course, you have the Nvidia GPU augmenting the CPU, so the computing cost goes up a little bit. It maybe doubles, but you reduce the computing time by roughly 20 times, so if you have a 10x savings, sure, and it's not unusual to see this kind of ROI for accelerated computing. So I would advise all of you, whatever that you can accelerate it. And then once you accelerate it, run it using GPUs. Acceleration gives you that immediate return on investment. Beyond that, however, the generative AI discussion is in the first wave of GI, wherein cloud service providers and infrastructure players like us place the infrastructure in the cloud, so that developers can use these devices to train, refine, guard, and so forth. The demand is so high that every $1 they spend with us results in $5 worth of rentals, so the return on that investment is amazing. Everything is sold out, and that is taking place everywhere in the world. The demand for this is simply astounding. Naturally, we are already familiar with some of the well-known programs, such as OpenAI, ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, and code generators that we utilize in our business. The increases in productivity are just astounding. Today, not a single software engineer in our organization does not utilize code generators, whether they are the ones we create for CUDA or USD, another language we use, Verilog, or C and C++. Creation of code. Therefore, I believe that software developers are no longer responsible for writing every line of code. The future is the notion that each of our software engineers would essentially have a digital engineer working alongside them around the clock. In my opinion, Nvidia employs 32,000 people, but there are, presumably, 100 times as many digital engineers working alongside those 32,000 people. Yes, let me know if you'd want further refinements.